Hi everyone, my name's Anne-Marie. Welcome to this Spellbinders card making project. In this episode we're going to be using two items from the Zenspirations range, and we're going to be using one of our old favourites. The items we're going to use are the Create, Celebrate and Thanks wording. We're going to use the word Celebrate from the dies in this set. We're also going to use the Swirl Heart from the Zenspirations range. And we're also going to be using the Moonflowers stamps from the Cool Vibes range. Everything I do use I shall put on my blog anyway, just in case I forget to mention something that we've used as we go along. If you've got any comments or anything to say, please feel free to comment on Facebook or on my blog. I can't reply on YouTube though, so if you want to reply, it's just Facebook and my blog. So the first thing that we're going to need is our base card. Now this is a 7x5 inch card. I'll show you how it looks on the cardometer. So this is something I've designed to be able to show you just to get a perspective at home of the size of the card that I'm using. So the largest on our cardometer is the A4, and then the A5 is the A4 folded in half, or if you're a friend across the pond then your sizing is just slightly different. But then the next size down is the 7x5, and that's the one that we're going to use today. It is my favourite size in card blanks because it's not too big and it's not too small. It just makes it easy for you to cover. There's not too much to cover, and there's not too little for you not to feel as though you've done something, if that makes sense. So I've just used a bone folder to make sure I've got a nice sharp crease along the edge. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the inside. Now as you can see, I've got what might look like a little messy mark in one corner, but I've actually already inked using a pink ink, just a blended option, she says, a blended area just where one of our sentiments is going to go. You'll see how it works when we're finished, but all I've done is taken my ink blending tool and just made a kind of smudgy inky mark. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to look for a contrast between the base of the card and what we're going to use. So the first thing I've prepared for the inside is I've taken a piece of ivory card. Now it's not quite the same ivory as the base card, but I'm not too worried about that. I've die cut the piece after I've cut it to fit, and I've used my Spellbinders matting and layering rectangles, set B, and it was the largest die to get this size so it sits nicely on the inside. So after cutting it to size, I've then die cut the word Celebrate out of our Zenspirations pack of word dies, and I've kept the actual die cut to one side because we're going to want that as well. And then using white ink, I've stamped around the edge using one of our Moonflower stamps, and then I've heat embossed it in white, and then I've just faintly coloured it in using a water brush pen just to give it the hint of something. So you can see it close up there. It's just white ink embossed with white embossing powder, and it just gives it a little bit of colour. So I've got a lot of tape on the back, and I've got tape around the word Celebrate, and so I can peel the back of the tape away. So just bear with me while I do that. Now I've put extra tape around the word so that it will sit flatter on the inside and it doesn't belly up basically, and we don't get bits where it raises up in some areas and not others. So we can peel our tape away like that, and I'm going to place the mat over our inked area, and you'll see the aperture of the word Celebrate will poke through like so. There we go. and you can just see how now that highlights the inked area. But next what we're going to do is the die cut that I cut out of this area, I'm going to stick back in. So I'm using a wet glue, and I'm just going to add a little bit of glue in a few areas. Now, I'm asked a lot about what kind of glue I use. Wet glue, I do prefer glossy accents, because you can use it as a glue, you can use it as a highlighter, you can use it to make embellishments, to give things that glossy finish. But on this occasion, I'm just using it as a plain old simple wet glue. So I've just dotted the glossy accents in a couple of places on the back of the word, and I'm popping the word back in to the aperture like that. And we'll just press it down for a moment or two, just for it to take hold, and you'll be able to see behind the word the inked area on the card has made the word stand out. And that is our insert for our card. Nice and simple, we've got enough room for our message, and it's going to work perfectly with the outside of the card. So now we can turn our attention to the outside. I'm going to use my bone folder again just to make sure that that crease line is still nice and sharp, and then we can add our first layer to the front. What I've done is I've cut a piece of ivory cardstock to match the card, and in each corner I've stamped using the moonflower stamps, and I've simply added a rose and the greenery. The greenery is the same as the greenery that we've used on the inside of the card. I've stamped them in white ink, and then I've heat embossed it with white embossing powder, so you can see how that's slightly raised. And then all I've done is I've inked it using both a watercolour brush and a little bit of ink just to blend in the middle of the flower. And I've added 2 crystals at either side of each of the corners. So it's a nice simple idea. It's a great technique using white embossing powder and white ink to get something to highlight on the base of your card, and then you can bring it out in colour to make it stand out. The darker the colour that you use, obviously the more it'll stand out. So I've just gone for a pastel shade of peach that's going to tone in with everything else that we use. So that's the first layer on our card base. The next thing is I've die cut 2 of the heart dies. So the die that we've used to cut the heart was the swirl die. So I've cut 2 in peach, and I'm just going to simply trim the bottom of this away so that it's just a swirl at the bottom. Because don't forget, once you purchase your dies, the die cuts that you die cut with them, if you need to trim them or alter them, then that's fine, because you've die cut your paper or your card. So if you wanted to cut that in half, you can. So we've just trimmed the bottom away, and then I'm going to just simply add a little bit of wet glue on the back in a couple of places, just so it can take hold. And we're going to do the same with both of the heart dies, I should say die cuts, and then I'm simply going to pop them through the centre of my card like that. That's the first one. Try and get it kind of straight, and then the second one I'm going to do exactly the same with. Add a little bit of wet glue on the base. Again, I'm using my glossy accents because it will take hold quite quickly, and it gives a good not finish. Well, it does give a good finish, but it just, you know, it dries clear. You can't see it, and I like it. I like glossy accents. Okay, so we're putting the second heart over the top of the first one and let them cross over. Just tweak it a little bit. You do get a little bit of wiggle room with the glue, so that if you don't quite get it straight, you can just tweak it a little bit. So there we go. I think that's a little bit better. So we've got the two hearts through the centre. Next, I've taken a piece of the same peach card that we've used for the background for the hearts, and I've cut out a rectangle, and then I've got 3D foam on the back of this. Now, even though I've got 3D foam, because I'm going over the hearts that are very intricate for sticking down, I'm just adding a little bit more wet glue, and then that will help adhere the heart to the background. So I'm going to place the rectangle through the centre of the hearts, and then I've cut another rectangle in Ivory Cardstock. I've stamped around the edge the same stamp that I used for the inside, the foliage, and again I've stamped it in white ink and I've heat embossed it with white embossing powder, and then I've just added a few crystals around the edge, and I've got flat tape on the back of this, so I'm going to create a matten layer over the top of the peach rectangle that we've just added, and I'm just going to simply place one on top of the other like that through the centre, and then I've got the word celebrate that I've die cut in Ivory Cardstock, and I've just made an ombre effect on it using peach, pink and green ink. So on the back of this I can use my wet glue and just add a little bit in a few places. Now you could use your Xyron for this. Make sure that you take it around all the edges and the inside of the letters if you use your Xyron, just to break the seal, to make sure that you get the glue away from it. And then I'm just going to place the word down onto our layer and then just hold it down for a few seconds in hope that it will stick. There we go. And I think the ombre effect on this card makes it stand out so well, and it just blends in so nicely, and it was just literally a quick effect using a water brush and the ink, and I've swept it across 3 times and just made it so it all looked as though it toned in with a little bit of extra water. So that's the word celebrate across the front. And then lastly, I've got a bow that I've tied. I've used a centre embellishment and I've just stamped 2 of the foliage and added that to either side of the embellishment. Again, I've stamped it in the white and I've heat embossed it, and I've got the embellishment on the top so I can place my bow just above our word, just to finish it off. And I think that is something a little bit different using the heart swirl dies. Very pretty, little bit blingy. Our inside is nice and simple, nice and clean looking, enough room for your messages. And then the outside, this would be suitable for weddings, anniversaries, anything you're going to celebrate with. You could adapt the colour, stands up nicely, would go in a normal envelope because it's not too high. You could make your bow a little bit lower, and it's just a pretty card. And I know the word dies, some people have trouble gluing them on because they're a little bit intricate, but do try with his iron. Break the seal around the words and everything. I've actually got a tricks and technique video about using Xyron on intricate pieces, so have a look at that if you've got trouble. Or just try a little bit of wet glue, just dotting it about, and I'm sure you'll be fine. I think that's such a pretty card, and the white embossing just makes it stand out so well. Something a little bit different. I do hope you've enjoyed watching this. If you've got any comments or anything to say, please feel free, let me know. Let me know if you like it, let me know if you don't. Let me know if it's a technique that you like to do, the white embossing, because it works so well on so many different projects. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.